Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're actually going to start to do our our blockouts. Now, typically this is stuff that in a typical production you probably get from your level designer. This may even be in the form of gray boxes. Hopefully, if you get to work with the level designer at the start, like your pre-flight or your pre-production or your blue sky, whatever you want to call it, like that early phase. This is the adjustment again that I was talking about with the Unreal unit. So again, if you snap to the grid, this is super easy. It's twice the size, 196 times 2, twice the unit size. Scale your asset twice, not a big deal. Okay. So, like I was saying though, we're starting off. I mean, tend to use splines to block this stuff out because they're really easy to see if it's on the grid or not. And again, for this stuff, especially for your designer blockout, you have to have this stuff snap on the grid. I'm not typically anal about stuff like this, but for for this, if your foundation isn't good, the rest of it is not going to be good. So spend the time, make sure it snaps on a grid. And again, I'm using the spline methodology because it's really easy. I can do like Boolean subtractions and stuff in here pretty quickly, and it's really efficient. You just select parent object, and there's your cutter or your subtraction operand. There you go. And then we're going to extrude this. Now again, remember the height is 192, so we want to make sure that our new character scale is at 192, and the length that we're going to use because of the texture resolution, because remember now at this point 192 is going to be 2048, twice the resolution of the 1024 that we said for the UDK unit size. So I'm going to use the same length for this. And again, it's just going to help me be consistent. It's going to help me try and stay uniform. When we talk about making kind of world and tiling textures, we're going to dive into splitting the texture sheet and splitting the asset sheet into actually designated 1024s and 2048s as well. But for right now, we're not going to deal with that stuff. But we will eventually. In Unreal 4, we can actually do full mirroring of assets, which is super useful. For this, kind of get your feet wet, get your blockout feet wet, get your game design or get your game modeling kind of vibe on. We're going to be using blueprints, so we'll be mirroring stuff in Unreal using blueprints, which is good and bad because lighting doesn't really mirror with blueprints, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Now, the key thing to remember with this, as with all your designer blockout, as long as this stuff snaps to a grid and snaps to each other, you can make all sorts of things. So for these hallways, we're only going to be making modeling one of these guys out just for the sake of the class, but I'm going to make a couple different kits so you guys can see the versatility of making sure that your assets actually work like this. But if these things snap, and they snap on the grid, and they snap to each other, you can make all sorts of T-sections, corner sections, all sorts of different things. And this is really important, especially for your level designers. If you guys can get them this early on, it makes a night and day difference for you later on in production, and it makes it really easy for the level designer as well. And you can take this into all sorts of things. You can set up stairs, you can set up doors, making sure that all the gameplay stuff is ironed out. Because again, gameplay is numero uno. It's the most important thing. It's more important than your art. It's more important than the marketing team. It's more important than anything. This is the most important thing for the game, is for the game to be fun. And so all teams kind of cater to gameplay, and I really want to stress that as well. But making sure that your assets work for your game designer, for your level designer is going to be really, really, really useful. And it's going to make your life easier because you're going to know how to make art and consistent art. So it makes it much easier later on. You can work on teams, you can work with people, and hopefully, the stuff that you're going to get is very versatile and it's going to work. So again, I'm going to make a little ramp piece here. Again, everything's still snapping to the grid, all this stuff is going to work. And again, at this point, very low poly modeling, as low as you can possibly go. I model in quads. Game engines take triangles, okay? And I encourage you guys to model in quads. Most of your poly counts you're going to get are in quads. It's been a long time since I've actually gotten a requirement to model stuff at triangle count level. Triangle count does matter, obviously, because it's what the engine has to translate, but I typically model stuff in polys. So if you're seeing an asset that's 10,000 polys, it's 20,000 triangles. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. Really quick, I'm just testing the height, just general height on this biped here. Trying to get it actually exact, but it's being difficult. It's not really meant to be used for what I'm doing, so it's like freaking out when it's deforming. That's okay. And so this is a nice little handy way, like if you're showing your level designer or your art director early on in your early blockout or mass out shapes. This is a really nice way for them to kind of contextually see things. And again, context is very important, and you want to be iterating and asking for feedback as much as you can. You notice I centered the pivot to the bottom of that corner because that's where it's going to snap. You kind of want to be consistent about that where you can. Some assets it's easier to do that than others, but you want to make sure you're consistently snapping in the same places. Again, for your level designers or for someone who else is coming on your team and they don't know what you're doing, this is a really easy way to make sure everyone's on the same page. The other benefit about moving your pivot and that kind of stuff is it also will help the way modifiers and stuff work. So again, you'll notice one of the things that I tell people is to work smart, not hard. So we're going to show you a little bit of that in a few minutes here. And again, for cylindrical shapes, same thing. Okay, we're going to model this out to the grid. Have my little grid snap on, my little grid scale thing.